part 3 of the course. I'm just going to go over my indicators, how I use them, why I use them, so we can get all of the aspects of my charts down before we get into the more nitty-gritty stuff about how I stop out of trades, how I use UVXY, how I use strength and weakness. Those are all going to be covered later. But first, we need to understand what all of these indicators on my charts mean. So I'm going to go through them one by one and just explain basically how I use them in every trade. So we're going to start off with VWAP. So just going to hide the rest of these. So VWAP, this is volume weighted average price. This is a super significant support and resistance line. So I don't use I don't use it as a confirmation into the trade or into any trades, but VWAP, when a stock is trading above it, it's considered generally bullish. It's trending generally bullish. And when it's below it, when a stock's below VWAP, it's considered trending generally bearish. So it can give you a general sentiment of where the stock's going to go, but I mostly just use it as a major point of support and resistance. So if we scroll through here, we can see that the stock really respects VWAP. We get some bounces on it and near it. So if we look, bounce, 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 2 more bounces. Look at all this. So it's a super strong point of support and resistance. This is because, quite honestly, a lot of traders use VWAP. So the more traders that use it, the more people that see it's a notable support and resistance, so more people are going to buy and sell at this point. It's also an average price point, so it indicates a possible reversal or a continuation. So if a stock comes down to the average price, it's either going to get bought more or sold more. So that's either a bounce or a break and hold. So it gets bought more at the average price, which is right here, bounces up and goes higher. If it breaks under, we expect it to continue being bearish. So that's basically how I use VWAP. VWAP, I use it mostly to trim my positions, since most of the time, if I'm in a trade, say I'm in calls, and, well, actually, let's say that I need to find a good example, actually. Let me find the time. I can use it all the time. So, like, usually, if I was in puts right here, I think there's a supply zone right here, actually. So if I was in puts right here, say I entered, I don't know, say I entered at a break of this support right here. I expect it, so once I enter a break of support, I usually trim at all my indicators since they're notable support and resistance. But if I'm in puts here, once we get to VWAP, I am almost fully out of my position since it's one of the, well, personally for me, it's the strongest support and resistance I have on my chart. So most of the time, it'll bounce right off of it. So if I'm in puts here, I want to be trimmed up right by here because I don't want to be a part of this second wave where my puts just get absolutely crushed. So that's basically how I use VWAP, standard support and resistance. It's not a very confusing concept, but it's a very foundational thing to know. Many people use VWAP. It's a very good tool to have, and I just use it for its general use, nothing very specific. So now I will move on to my personal favorite indicator, the 20 SMA. So once again, the 20 SMA, it's a very strong point of support and resistance, but I actually do use the 20 SMA as a confirmation. As I've probably mentioned before in other videos, it's I can use 20 SMA confirmation as a way to get into trades and out of trades. So what I consider to be 20 SMA confirmation is a break above the 20 SMA and a hold, a 1 candle hold. So here we go. So say right here, I'm waiting to get in calls. This candle right here, this one that I'm highlighting. Oh, there we go. That one is the candle that broke the 20 SMA. And now this candle held fully above it. So this candle right here would be considered my 20 SMA confirmation bullish since this candle broke and this one held. So now 20 SMA confirmation, I hold until we get a break under and hold. So technically, just based off of 20 SMA, I'm still in this trade. The market actually closes before, but then it opens up here again, and then break and hold. So this is where I would exit that trade, just based off of the 20 SMA. It could be used all day. So right here, break, hold, and then you eventually ride up to there before you get stopped out, because this candle would stop you out. Here we go. Another entry, a break and a hold. So you enter on this candle right here. Ride it all the way up, wait for a break and hold. You get all the way up to here, and then right here is when you get 20 SMA confirmation out of the trade. So we can scroll through and find tons of examples of how well it works. 20 SMA bearish confirmation is right here. Since this candle right here, this red candle broke, and then this green one held under. So we're never break and hold all the way down until here. So that's very solid puts play just based on the 20 SMA. So I use it as a very strong confirmation into my trades and out of my trades. And it's also a very notable point of support and resistance, as all of my indicators are. So now we will move on to the 9 SMA. The 9 SMA is my purple chart. We have the drawings from the last one. Not my purple chart, my purple line on my charts. And it's not a very strong support and resistance, but I still use it. So I mostly just use the 9 SMA to trim my positions. So I don't use it as confirmation in or out, but I typically trim my positions once we break the 9 SMA, either bullish or bearish. So say I was in calls right here. I'm going to trim it once we break 9 SMA. That would be my trim right there. So I just use it to trim. It's a very simple concept. Once again, not very hard to understand. So if I was in calls right here, trim right there. 9 SMA, we broke it. It's not a break and hold for the 9 SMA when I trim. It's just a break. So I would trim there, trim there. So it's a very reliable thing. So if you're not entirely sure points of support and resistance, you can trim based off of the 9 SMA. So let's say you're playing this bull flag right here. This might be a wedge. Yeah. So this is a falling wedge. So we enter calls on this support bounce on high volume. We ride all the way up, break the resistance, ride all the way up, and our first trim is right here on this candle. That's just based on a 9 SMA trim. So I just used it to trim my positions. It's not a very complicated indicator. It's a pretty solid point of support and resistance, but since it's a shorter period, it's only a 9 candle period average, it doesn't have as much grit to it as, say, like 180 period, like I'm going to go to later, my 180 VWMA. It's a way stronger support and resistance since it took more candles to form that line. So that's the 9 SMA, very simple. Just use it to trim my positions. Now we will go to my VWMA cloud. This one's really cool. So I use the VWMA cloud for two different purposes. The first is an overall of a general trend. So if we zoom out here, we can see that this cloud, it actually changes color based on the general trend of the market. So right here, see that we're starting to go bearish. Cloud turns red. Bearish, 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 bearish. Start to pop up a little here. And the cloud gets thinner. When the cloud gets thinner, that means that it's not as like explosive of a move. So when you have super explosive moves like this, where it just runs up, the cloud's going to get wider. Right here, super explosive move, wider. So once you see the cloud, it's red, which means it's a bearish trend. But once it starts to get a little thinner like this, it's not moving as explosively. And sometimes that can mean that the trend is getting exhausted, meaning that it's not getting enough sellers in this particular example. It's not getting enough sellers to continue going down at the speed it once was. So that's what it means when it gets a little narrower. And then the green channel obviously means the cloud the green cloud, it means we're in a bullish trend. So right here, bullish trend, bearish trend, little bullish, little chop, bearish, bullish. So I use it as a general indication of trend. So now it's also very strong support and resistance. So whichever line typically is closest to the price action is the 90 VWMA. So you can see that it bounces off of the 90 VWMA quite a lot. That's a 180 VWMA bounce, and the 180 VWMA band is the one further away. So here's the 90 and then the 180. So typically it'll bounce off the 90, sometimes off the 180. But if it chops through the 90, the next place I'm looking for a bounce or a place to trim is off of the 180. So that's essentially just what I use the 180 and 90 VWMA cloud for. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but VWMA stands for volume weighted moving average. So this moving average incorporates volume into it, and volume is a huge part of my trading. So that's one thing that's different about this indicator compared to the others that really makes it stand out to me, is that it uses volume. So I'm just going to show you guys the name of these quickly. So if you go to indicators, you just search up SMAs, and then I use the one by Vita right here. So that's for the 9 and 20 SMA. So to set it up, you click on it. I'll hide the rest of mine. Here you go. So this is what it looks like when you first click on it. So to get the 9 and 20 SMA, you're going to hover over it, click settings, and then you're going to deselect 3 and 4 since we only need 2. You're going to make the first one purple, make it fully purple, and 1 line of thickness. Second one, you're going to make it this cyan color, fully cyan, make it 1 line of thickness, and then you go over to inputs, enable first and second MA, unclick the third and fourth. You're going to make the length 1, 9, and the length 2, 20. And then once you have that all done, everything should look like this. Doesn't matter what these are since they're disabled. And then they're all set up. So that's the 9 and 20 SMA. And now the VWMA cloud, you look up best cloud all MA. It's this one right here. So once again, you have to clean it up a little. Go to settings. You deselect trend state bar coloring. Deselect both of the shapes. And then moving average, you can make this one green still, but 1 line of thickness. 1 line of thickness for the red. And then you can keep the background. I like how it is by default. And then you go over to input. And then you do type of moving average. This is where you click VWMA. You make the length of moving average 190. And then click this one, VWMA. Make this one 180. So that's how you get the 90 and 180 VWMA cloud. It's very simple. Just takes a few steps. And then last of all, but not least, VWAP. It's very standard. I use the TradingView technical one, volume weighting average price. So you just want to clean it up a little like the others. Hit settings and style. You deselect upper band, lower band, and bands fill. I personally make my VWAP yellow, and you click this, and I make mine circles. So once you have that all set up together, it should look something like, oh, I have to activate these. It should look something like this. And that's my indicator setup. I have a slideshow going along with this just to reference back to if you have any questions or you want to look over something quickly without rewatching the whole video. You can reference back to the slides. So that's it. I hope you guys learned something and have a great day.